So, we all have those old movies that are probably not great or anything, but you have a tons of nostalgia for, right?
I don't think I like that question. Why?
Well, Cop and a Half is one of those movies for me. I had this one on VHS as a kid and would just pop it in when there wasn't anything on TV.
You know what? You were very good back there.
We had other tapes as a family, but this one was specifically my VHS tape, so that's probably why I watched it so much. Either way, let's talk about this movie for a bit. Cop and a Half is a 1993 family buddy cop comedy directed by none other than Henry Winkler and starring Burt Reynolds and Norman D. Golden II as grizzled police veteran Nick McKenna and eager cop wannabe Devin Butler, respectively. Devin is the main character and driver for the plot for this, but you don't get Burt Reynolds without giving him top billing. This movie quickly establishes that young Devin idolizes cops and spends most of his time pretending to be one both at home and school, where his precocious attitude and intelligence get him into trouble with authority figures, both bullies and administration. Devin witnesses a car chase, which ends when one of the bad guys jumps out of the car and tries to flee on foot. The cop car continues pursuing this pedestrian and eventually runs him down in someone's backyard. Here we really get our first look at Detective Nick McKenna, a surprisingly violent police officer who plays the classic "I am getting too old for this" card while making light of the excessive violence. I also love the nondescript drugs of just colored stuff inside of vials. I don't think they ever fully define what this is, but it makes me think of those old Dare drug briefcases that they showed us back in elementary school. Detective McKenna is a strong believer in corporal punishment.
Now, I'm gonna tie you to the car, you see? Because I don't want you getting in my car. What?
Brett, you're a sore loser! Hey, McKenna, come on, man. Hey, listen. This is not civilized. Daniel McKenna, you're not gonna do this! Not the freeway!
I mean, we will see this guy again soon and realize he didn't actually get road hauled here, but it's still a pretty dark joke. Later, Devin notices the same car and decides to do the typical nosy cop move and follow them. Again, there would be no movie without this, but still, come on, man, mind your business. Following the car to an industrial site, we get our look at the villain of the film, Vinnie Fountain, although Devin only gets a look at his easily recognizable shoes. Vinnie and his goons are suspicious of the now-released henchman from earlier and decide to off him for supposedly snitching them out to McKenna. They dramatically shove a chicken leg into his mouth before lifting his chair up with a crane to drop him in a tank of water or some other liquid. He notices and makes eye contact with Devin right as they gag him, and this little boy just stares him in the eyes as they hoist him to his death. Pretty hardcore, Devin. The villains leave after scaring off some pigeons, and we cut to the entire scene under police investigation. McKenna arrives on scene, and we learn that Devin has been asking for him by name and has valuable information as a witness. Devin will only reveal his information if they let him be a cop, and honestly he gets some points back for utilizing the leverage available to him.
Anybody ever heard of quid pro quo? One hand washes the other. That's bonus information.
So they let Devin shadow Nick for a day, and they have some fun with the other cops as they all head out. I think this kid nailed his lines, if I'm honest. I have seen some comments that lean the other way, but even witty kids still sound like kids. I like this one in particular.
I'm an 8-year-old, not a miracle worker.
Get in the car.
The two characters have some back and forth before Devin chases what he thinks is a purse snatcher. Side note, check out this 90s skater kid in his super baggy clothing. You gotta love it. They end up pursuing a lead from the car that ends them to a name, Bobo. After chasing down a couple of false leads on dudes named Bobo.
Bobo who?
Bobo, I don't know. How many Bobos can there be?
Devin is dropped back off at home and finds out that a school counselor is waiting for him with his grandma. We instantly recognize that this is the villain Vinnie, but it takes Devin a moment or two of caution until he notices those recognizable shoes. More points to Devin here, as he very wisely plays it cool and even tries to deflect some attention away from his family by lying to Vinnie. Devin alerts the police after Vinnie leaves, and it is decided that Devin will spend the night with Detective McKenna for safety, despite Nick's protests. This is where we finally start to really crack through McKenna's shell and see the two characters bond. Right up until Nick pulls a gun on Devin in the middle of the night due to paranoia. He is clearly more disturbed by this incident than Devin and distances himself accordingly. The villains decide to take Devin out as he is closer to the police than they realize, and this is what leads to McKenna and Devin reconnecting, with Nick diving in front of a speeding car to save the young boy. Now that the pair are back in action, they chase down the final Bobo and end up at a biker bar. Devin has some good banter with the bartender.
Give me a milk, Steve. In a dirty glass.
While McKenna fights with the rather large Bobo and the rest of the bar, with Devin saving him by pretending to be a police backup with the loudspeaker on their car. Back at school, we see Devin finally utilize the new skills and experiences he has learned to take out the bullies that have been troubling him, ending with them handcuffed to each other through a fence gate. This leads to a triumphant moment where all the other kids stand around and cheer his heroism. The villains then show up at the school and continue their pursuit of Devin, but he organizes a collective distraction and defense with all the now loyal kids. They even pull a Spartacus scene that ends with an all-out Twinkie attack. It worked pretty well, and the villains leave the school in defeat. We now learn that Devin's master plan was to sneak into their car, but he is exposed when his friend checks in with him via a walkie-talkie. Devin is captured, and does his best to try and observe where he's being taken, realizing that a tip from earlier has a double meaning. The bad guys stick Devin in a side room, but he manages to get the quick message relayed to McKenna about 100 grand. We see more nondescript drugs, and Vinny finally confronts Devin directly and orders his death. While taking Devin off to finally remove their problem, Bobo arrives on his motorcycle from earlier. Only it's not Bobo, it's McKenna. Surprise! Burt Reynolds! This guy that is totally not a stunt double does a pretty cool wheelie to block the bullets and frees our young hero. McKenna takes a shot to the shoulder, but manages to rescue Devin and begins a lengthy escape sequence that starts on the motorcycle and ends up with speedboats chasing each other out on the water. With the two working together due to McKenna's injury, they eventually escape by jumping their boat up and out of the harbor. The bad guys follow them, but land poorly and end up stuck underneath a chum pipe. Gross. We cut to the happy ending with Devin working with his new father figure to row his grandmother around a lake, with both characters having learned from each other and becoming better for it. Okay, no, cheesiness aside, this is not that bad of a movie overall. This was reflected at the time, as Cop and a Half opened at number 1 and grossed a little over $40 million against a budget of $14 million. Now, reviews and critical reception went a little differently, with most calling it pretty boring or unoriginal at the time. Roger Ebert did give it 3 out of 4 stars though, pointing out Norman D. Golden II's performance, which was liked by most other critics as well. Rotten Tomatoes currently gives it a 13% on the tomato meter and a 34% on audience score. I rewatched it the other night prior to making this video, and I honestly think it holds up. Not every movie needs to be thought-provoking cinema, and sometimes you should just try to have fun. Devin is portrayed as naive about some things, but is generally very witty and more competent than most kids his age. I think that's what I connected with back in the day. I appreciated movies that were not just goofy for a kid's sake, but portrayed kids that had to deal with possibly adult situations while maintaining a childlike sense of wonder or fun. I mean, look, this whole movie plays like some pro-police propaganda these days, but I can remember what it was like as a kid to blindly trust and believe in authority like that. I am curious where the character of Devin would end up in the future. I mean, he busted a violent drug kingpin and witnessed his first murder at 8. Kid could probably hit his grizzled film noir phase well before 40. Norman would go on to appear in a few more roles over the next 5 years, before stepping away from acting to focus on his education. Mr. Golden is still out there, us 80 babies aren't that old, and is credited as an actor, producer, and professional speaker, so go look him up if you're interested. Burt Reynolds just kept on being Burt Reynolds. Not much else to say there. I also just recently learned that they made a straight-to-DVD sequel entitled Cop and a Half New Recruit in 2017, starring Lou Diamond Phillips and Lulu Wilson. But it honestly looks a lot more like a cheap kiddie movie with much lower stakes. I might force myself to watch it at some point, but the trailer didn't exactly inspire me as is. Whatever. So that's Cop and a Half. You probably clicked this video due to nostalgia or memories around the film, but let me know what your favorite parts of it were down in the comments. I am working on setting up a VCR that I can record content from. I have access to quite a few VHS tapes that I would love to make something about. Please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Hopefully I'm able to talk about something you want to hear about. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you come back again in the future. I've been Dr. Ursa, and until next time, take care.